And we're live. Kia ora, everybody. Thanks for listening and tuning in today to Māori Land Mondays podcast. I've got a special guest tonight, and it is what we're recording at night, and you'll be listening to us on the Monday. My special guest is my papa, Te Taru White, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and all that jazz, but it's a real privilege to have him. He has a lot of substance, history, and first-hand experience in many things to do with whenua Māori in Aotearoa. And I'm going to get him in a few times over the next, well, however long in the future, to share his experiences with us so we can have some authentic stories straight from the person himself. As you know, the theme is Māori land or whenua Māori and anything to do with it, whether it's my journey and my struggles with my own whenua Māori or our family's whenua Māori, whether it's services or policies and things that affect whenua Māori, and obviously with my dad, you're going to hear what he has to share tonight. And we're going to start off with, I think I've given it the right title, the Fiscal Envelope Days. But before I do so, I'm going to hand over to Dad, Te Taru. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Bob. Yes, how are you?
I'm good. So as you know, Dad, this is going to be recorded. It's recording now live to YouTube, but that's obviously going to save in the background. And then we're also going to put this on Spotify. How do you feel about that?
Oh, look forward to it. Something to
That's
say
good.
about some of the life experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned the other night, Dad, one of the motivations for doing this is, Jeremiah thinks highly of you. And it's actually really lovely because having outsiders, in-laws, I've come to realize that myself, David, and Naruimata have, and you know this, we've always, you've always been dad to us. Dad,
Mm.
our dad. And you've always done dad stuff with us. And ever since we were children, we've already always related to you as dad. I think that's a credit to you because that means you've been a parent.
Yeah.
Not just the third party that we've kind of watched him live his career. We've had no interest in your career. And I mean that, you don't take that badly, Dad.
No, not at all, Bob. It's
It's
true.
actually a compliment. It's because we've been the worst kids ever when you think about it, because we've had no interest in these awesome things that you've done throughout your life while you were parenting us. And I think that's the point, is you were parenting us. And so I've always known people were like, did you know your dad did this? And I'll be like, no, well, kind of. But he was taking me to swimming, or we were doing something at school together that we weren't really worried about, burdened with what you were doing. But it was huge stuff. So
Mm.
first of all, Dad, credit to you. I apologize that I haven't always known the details, but it was Jeremiah that said, you do realize that you should be getting your dad to speak on that podcast, eh? He's got some stories that he's told me about, because he will sit there and actually listen. And he said, and you might want to record them for the future. Well, how do you feel about that, Dad, what I've just said?
No, that's right, Bob. My concentration was really on involving you guys in sport activities and your education. And it wasn't really about what I was doing. I was simply earning a living, gaining my experiences in my life, in my working life. You, David and Naruimata weren't really involved in my work. And that was appropriate, really. It just allowed me the freedom to get on with what I had to do, and you and my family to get on with life and learning the skill sets that you have learned to date. And you look at you now, look at your brother, and you're living your lives. So, and that's good. And so I have an opportunity to share my life now with you guys, my working life. And yeah, it's varied. I've got a string of experience from my start as an engineering geologist, HR manager in hospitals, right through to tribal organizations and entities, and even now working in semi-retirement on boards and on a range of boards, and they come from my experiences in life and the skills I've got. And I've enjoyed the opportunity to make change where I could, for the better, and hopefully add value to our society now, and hopefully for our mukapunas to come. So yeah, other than that,
Dad.
where I'm at.
Ooh.
I mean, I'm really
Honestly,
pleased that you fellas, you guys weren't really involved in my work, and I didn't need to have you involved. Just come home and my dad, I'm your dad, and I'll take you to swimming, I'll help you with your schooling, those sorts of things, and yeah, it's been a nice balance.
thank you, Dad. That's awesome, honestly. So, I think, like you said, it's appropriate because, like, now as we have our own families, and I am turning 40 this week. Woo.
Yeah,
So it's kind of appropriate now, and I'm grateful though that we're able to do this in time. Nothing worse than never stopping to find out these stories. So how we'll go with this, Dad, is it's fairly organic. Myself and Dad haven't actually planned anything because Dad tends to know everything so well to the minute detail that he doesn't need to plan. So how we're going to do this, Dad, is I'll just give you the floor. Maybe I'll prompt you every now and then with some questions. And if you can just keep in mind, Pups, that this kind of stuff goes public, as in it goes to Spotify. And even though I keep my podcast on the down low, because I prefer that only a few people who are really interested will listen, there it could go viral. Sometimes things do. And so where there is a place where there is somebody's name, because we haven't asked permission, even though it was factual and it was true, where you can, do you reckon you could just use their role name or something
yeah,
like that?
I can do
Their
that.
title. Yeah, just rather than
Yep,
their name, just because we haven't asked for permission, and
yep,
there might be some decisions they made at that time that they don't want to admit to.
yep.
Yeah. All right, Dad. So I was wondering if you could just take a few minutes just to give us a quick background on your career, maybe just a couple minutes there. Just start because we'll find out more about you, and
Right.
then to tell us what fiscal envelope means, because even I'm a bit
Yeah.
kuare. Okay, Dad. Up
Well,
to you.
it's really good.
Through to you.
It's really good, Bub, that for the first time probably in our lifetime that you're sitting there listening to what your papa did, has worked on, and some of the detail behind that. So it's a nice time to share. Well, I started out as my working life as an engineering technician on the Tongariro Power Scheme. Then I went to university, came out and worked as an engineering geologist for Ministry of Works back in the day. I worked on tunnels, dams, and so on engineering aspects. Ended my engineering geology days in the coal mines of Huntly. 4 years I worked in there, and I loved every moment of it. Working for the first time with a lot of our Maori miners, working underground, in some ways facing the same dangers, but the same community spirit of our people. And they were intrigued. Here's this Maori boy, there's the mining geologist, which was pretty unique at the time. But one day I was sitting in the coal mine just listening, just turning off my light, sitting amongst the coal and hearing all the crackling sounds. And I would analyze it as a scientist, from the stresses moving here and there. Then I thought, how would Māori think about this? Because I wasn't strong in my Māori side at that point. And I said, it's probably Mother Earth, Papa Tuanuku, groaning because she's got a cut in her stomach and her puku. And it's actually shifting the pain and to make it more digestible. And I started thinking about that. And I said, yeah, that's how people would have thought. They didn't think about stresses and everything else. They thought about Mother Earth, Papa Tuanuku, and the hurt we were creating in her and the balance she had. From that moment on, I had that epiphany that I need to follow that further. I need to follow my other side of my thinking, that Mātauranga side of my thinking that I don't know about. I'm going to explore that and find out what it is to be Māori. So I actually left the mines. I left it in a good time because the government were actually corporatizing everything in 1987. They corporatized state coal, so they corporatized it, made it a corporate organization. They offered me, I was one of the first to be offered my job back, and I said, no, thank you, I'm off. I've had enough now. I need to go and explore that other side of me. So when I left, I set up a redundancy unit in Huntly at Waihimarai. And I worked with the Timi Maipis and the Maipis at that time, actually getting redundant miners into jobs. Spent 6 months doing that, and I enjoyed that too. Got them houses, got them jobs, And then I left and I did the same thing in Tokoro, getting redundancy opportunities for foresters in Tokoro. And then I got offered a job in Māori affairs, firstly as a senior community officer in Rotorua, and then as an assistant director in Rotorua for Māori affairs. And then I really started mobilising as a millennial at that time in my 30s, mid-30s, looking at establishing Māori entities in regards to the government's desire to devolve Māori affairs to Māori, which they never did in the end. Anyway, they established Te Puni Kōkiri, and I became one of the inaugural directors of Te Puni Kōkiri in 1992 in Rotorua. I took over that Rotorua office. 9 months later, I was brought down to Wellington to head all the regional offices, to take over as a general manager. And that was interesting, because if I look at North, and I'm just going to say this because these were really lovely people will know, they were people who were engaged with their communities. Actually, I won't mention the names, as you've said. People will know who they are. But they were wonderful people to work with, all engaged and doing the best they could for their people, engaging with our people, making sure they were connected to the policies that would impact upon our people. And so we had that job, a joyous job it was as well. And I won't say any more other than to say that half a dozen of those people become very, very prominent politicians in the government over time. But anyway, getting back to that point of the fiscal envelope, I became the general manager of Te Puni Kōkiri in 1993. At that time, treaty settlement processes were in vogue. The Sea Lords deal, first of all, giving Māori charge of significant amounts of quota in 1992, which then led to the government's thinking about treaty policies and how they could settle policies forever and a day. So they came up with $1 billion. We're going to fund $1 billion for Māori settlement of treaty claims. And that was going to be full and final settlement. Well, that was a bit of a joke for a start. Nothing was ever going to be full and final. And a $1 billion offer was seen by Māori as an even bigger joke, because even Tainui at that time thought that their claim was worth $10 billion, not $1 billion, to settle all claims. That was a bit laughable. And at the same time, the government were going to spend $1 billion on 2 naval frigates. So on one hand, here we are.
Can we stop on that one, Dad? I
Yep.
do remember that. I remember being, so I must have been 12, 12 or maybe 12 years old. We moved to, and I was at Nine Intermediate, and I remember just hearing you speak about, because I remember being whakama. It was still that time, where at schools, unless you were at kura kaupapa or a Māori school, you were a minority. And I remember, so Nine Intermediate, I wasn't a minority. We were probably, 30% of the classroom. But once I got to Sacred Heart College, Catholic school, I was the only Māori in a class of about 29 or 30. And so, those conversations that go on in social studies about what the current affairs are and everything, it's just embarrassing. Not what was going on was embarrassing, but being the only person where people were just entitled to speak about these issues in a kuare way, about these Maoris and everything like that in the class. So I remember being like, oh my God, Māori are getting billions of dollars, and we're, they're talking about us as if we're greedy. And then I came home and heard you say the government are spending, how much was that on a frigate?
$1 billion on 2
So
naval
they were
frigates.
spending $1 billion on 2 naval frigates, and they were giving how much for settlement of our grievances, treaty grievances?
$1 billion.
So 2 boats and people.
2
Got the
boats
same
and
amount of
people.
people.
And one was for the naval integrity of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the other one was supposed to settle all the social grievances and issues of Māori forever and a day. So that, in a sense, was a big joke, right?
And I remember that once you said that, I was able to sit up straight again and be like, hang on, they're going to spend $1 billion on boats, ships, and they're going to take forever, and the grievances they've done to people, to a whole, to Māori people. So forever in the future, and for everything from the past, was going to receive the same amount of money as these 2 boats that
That's
weren't
right.
actually to go to war. They were just like a tohu,
Yeah,
a symbol.
that's right. To say that we were upgrading our naval fleet, and by $1 billion upgrading our relationship with iwi Māori. So that we were, as a policy group, as a policy organisation, Puni Kokiri was then charged with taking that policy out. And even though a number of us had those feelings, we had to steel ourselves to the job that was before us. Take the fiscal envelope out, that $1 billion opportunity out, right? And I was the general manager in charge of that, had to establish the consultation process with all of our regional officers, because they were going to be the instruments to take it out, and actually steel their back for the tsunami of grievance that was going to come their way, because Māori were really already building the impetus to really fight this thing hard, right? So what I did before I went out with our team was I did a trial run around the East Cape. A lot of people don't know this, but I took some acetates with the overheads on it, and I took it around about a dozen locations around the East Cape, coming back around towards the Portuguese. And they fed me well. I mean, they didn't gobble me up because I was delivering this message, because I told them what I thought was the truth. I said, here we are. I'm going to trial this with you fellas. Here it is, $1 billion on the table, 2 frigates over here versus all your treaty grievances over there. Now, what do you think? Well, what do you think they thought? So I said, we are going out to tell you that, right? You need to be prepared, but I'm sure we're already hearing the noise that our people are prepared for the fight that's going to ensue over this particular policy. So, I told them that, we'll lead them through it all, and this is what it meant. And they said, oh, kapai, boy, kapai, pleased you came out. So it was an experiment for me to get the feeling and get the tone of how we might actually run this, what we're going to face. And I enjoyed that. But what followed was the decision to open up the first fiscal envelope. Where are we going to do it? And of course, I put my hand up with the then chief executive, who said, Rotorua, Te Arawa. Why Rotorua, Te Arawa? Because I knew the team. I knew the team up there. It was headed by really, really, well-known people in our community. I knew they could do the job. And I knew them, and I knew Te Arawa as well. And I believed that Te Arawa, despite the protests, would not be throwing the chairs and bricks and taiahas at the visitors. They would listen them out. They would look at them, and they would look them in the eyeballs and tell them straight, without really, really getting into anything, dubious around fisticuffs and stuff. So basically, on the day that we planned the day, and then my team in Rotorua, I got the view back from the chief executive. Hey, your team in Rotorua are getting a bit cold feet on this one. They're getting pulled up by everybody on the street, more or less signaling them as being kupapa, traitors to the cause. And they weren't. They were of the whānau over there, and a lot of our whānau just came around them, right? So So the chief executive sent me up to Rotorua, and he said, you got to go up there, man. Yeah, well, okay, I'll go up to my team and put a steel up the back, just to reinforce it all. So I got there and I said, guys, gals, you got to do this, okay? It's our job, and look, stay hard, stay strong. We may not believe in it ourselves in terms of what it's proffering, but let's put it on the table. It's our job. Come on, we can do it. And they did. Did a magnificent job. I went to go to the airport to brief the ministers when they landed at the airport. Oh, man, it's going to be hot. Oh, and we hopped in the car. We drove through, and there were crowds and crowds of people already gathering and marching. They parted for our cars, went down into Unaumutu, parked it up, and we got welcomed onto the marae, surrounded by this high level of protest, flags flying everywhere. And I believe at that time as well that there were quite a lot of undercover police in the crowd, because this was hot stuff. They go into their whare, and of course people followed in, and some of the flag flyers were there, and one of our young men from Te Puni Kokiri had to stand at the door and say, stop, you can't come in with those flags. And they said, yes, we can. No, you can't. So it was right in the face of our people. And to credit of our staff, they held their own. So the conversations happened. I can tell you, the ministers up in the States, they got it all, throwing it. And then, and I could hear mutterings amongst one or two of them say, oh, that's not too bad. And I was thinking, too bad? Gee, you're lucky. You're lucky. Wait till you get to some of the other areas. So that was the day. And we've laid it on the table. We've done our job. Now, and it was Doug Graham who was the minister at the time, and I'm going to mention that minister because it's in history. And he had the job to take it out and around for another 10 or 11 hui. So after Rotorua and after that experience, we went to the second one, which was in Portuguese. And boy, the same thing there. It was packed. And we were sitting up in the front table with Doug Graham, myself, and our chief executive, and Doug Graham is the minister. And he was delivering away there, and the cameras were rolling. And the next minute, the cameras swung around and said, "Where's they going?" We looked down the hallway, down the back of the front of the marae, and there was this fella standing there with a blanket over his shoulder, a aluminium ladder on his shoulders, looking around. Then he just struts his stuff, goes down the aisle, walks down towards the minister's table. And I'm sitting there with the chief executive saying, "Hey, what's he going to do? Is he going to throw that ladder?" "Oh, no. Well, I'll look after the minister. You look after this guy over here, and we'll settle, just in case." Well, this comes in and the cameras are rolling. He walks up. There's a deathly silence. We're watching him. He stops in front of the table, opens up his aluminium ladder, looks up at the roof, looks like that, and he climbs up with his blanket, takes it out, drops the blanket, then he gets his pins and goes dunk, dunk, up into the roof, and then he lets his blanket drop. It was his dirty old horse blanket with his submission on it. It was a work of art. In fact, it's seen as a work of art so much now that it's hanging on the walls of the Office of the Treaty Settlement.
I think you're able to mention his name.
Sorry? I can mention his name. It was the one and only Tamaiti.
Can you say that one more time, Dad? Who was it?
It was Tamaiti. That famous name, Tamaiti. He protested by just dropping that blanket. He never said a word, had a submission on it, dropped the blanket, reassembled his aluminium ladder and just strutted out the door, not even mentioning the word. And the cameras were on him. It was absolutely theatrical. And he made huge impact, with saying nothing but doing that. And that blanket has become a symbol now of its time, and it hangs in the Office of the Treaty Settlement on the wall. And now that Tamaiti is quite the famous artist. He paints a lot of these protest stories in canvas now. And boy, they're beautiful art too. But and after that particular week, Doug Graham turned to the chief executive and myself at the time, and he had a conversation. "I got another 10 more of these to do. Do you think I should carry on doing this? Or shall I just cancel out? Man, this is getting a bit too hot." And the comment back to him was, "Minister, you have to finish the job. You have to finish the job. Okay? Do the job. Finish it." And from the chief executives and my point of view at that time, it was about, very importantly, trying to, in one way, shift our people's minds from grievance into development thinking. We could fight this thing and continue to fight it, and we should. But we should not just cut it out right there and then, because this had a hell of a lot of meaning to our future opportunities. If we rejected it outright before we even got to the end, we would not know where it would end. We would even not know where to start again with the treaty claims processes. Anyway, long story short, the minister completed those 12, full 12, and he became a Knight of the Realm as a result of all of that. But interestingly enough, despite the protests and people really rejecting it right around the motu, the government decided to push ahead. And I will argue that one of the reasons why they did that is that one of the leading treaty entity was Tainui. They were already in the process of settling a treaty deal. And they were the first one in, followed close on the heels by Ngāi Tahu. So that actually said, iwi here are prepared to settle. So the government rolled on that one out, right? And of course, at that time, Tainui said, "Look, our deal is $10 billion. That's what it's worth in its own. But what we will do on your $150 billion that you've offered us, yep, and return of lands, yep, and all of these things, let's just suggest to you that the $9.9 billion is our investment in the modern state of Aotearoa, New Zealand," or words to that effect.
Can we sit on that for a moment, Dad?
Yeah, sure.
That is a point that Jeremiah, everybody, that's my husband, who is not Māori and wasn't privy to these conversations or this politics growing up, it wasn't in his household like it was ours. He told me, he said, you need your dad to share that with the world, that this is like, it's not that Māori, this iwi, Tainui, accepted something because that's what it was worth. It was because, and you're going to explain it further, though, it's actually nobody stopped to realize the magnitude of their gift, of iwi's gift to Aotearoa. They just see that,
Exactly.
how much money did you settle for? And it's like it doesn't, what the amount of money that they received and they settled for is nowhere near the value of it. It's simply
Absolutely.
what they accepted in order to move forward. And then what happens from, so can you just expand on that a little bit more? That dynamic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you have to realize that we once owned all of Aotearoa, New Zealand, 66 million acres. Now we own only 5%. And I use that word ownership guardedly because we didn't really have a term for ownership in my view. We passed on to future generations, right? We were caretakers for the next generations. So we lost the bulk of our land. And in losing that bulk of our lands, a lot of it by trick and trickery, we basically, and that's in a way where Tainui said, look, we had this, it's worth 10 billion to us. So we are not getting 10 billion, but we'll take 150 million. This is the context of it all. This is what I heard at the time. We'll take $150 million plus the land back, and we'll develop our resource and get more over time. We will rely upon ourselves to grow ourselves back. But you remember, not only are we going to get an apology from the Queen of England, but you're also going to remember that we give you $9.9 billion of our investment to build the modern state of Aotearoa, New Zealand. So when people say that you guys are greedy, come on, give us a break. That's just one tribal entity. You've taken so much from us. But what we're going to do now is we're going to reconcile our space and build back. Now Tainui is worth probably close to $1 billion and more. Right? So they've built themselves back in dollar terms, in land acquisition terms, and they're seeking their own tino rangatiratanga despite what happened to them. And when you think about the apology from the Queen of England, it's interesting to note that that was the first royal assent ever given to a treaty settlement anywhere, right? And in that way, that was in some ways an honour back to Tainui and back to our people that treaty did matter. But actually, we know how England really does feel about the treaty. So that's that Tainui one. But hot on the back of that one was Ngāi Tahu as well. Ngāi Tahu came in behind them, but $205 million, plus they could go with a shopping basket around the South Island and buy up land at a government rate. And the government were hopeless at running those businesses. So they got all these blinking businesses for the cheap. They got them for the cheap. They bought forestry estates and everything else, and good on them, right? And now they're worth close to $2 billion, right? And of course, both of them, and this is a real thing as well, they actually had a relativity clause in their deals, 17%. If it exceeded $1 billion, they'll get 17% of any excess over that amount, right? So they had a relativity, so they're raking in a hell of a lot more money because it's now around $2.4 billion worth of settlements. From what I understand, the latest numbers are somewhere thereabouts. You can imagine there's another $1.4 billion, so they get a bite of that to equalize their relativities with existing deals. So Tainui and Ngāi Tahu went through, and after that, bang, and there's now been 73 treaty claims settled. And one of the things that people, that the thought that we had originally, that look at this as shifting our people from grievance to development, it shows that our people can do this because we cannot rely on the system to relent and give us what we want. We have to build it back ourselves and have faith that we can do that. And for me, when I witness the stuff on the ground with the treaty settlement claims processes, that's what it does. So this is not in history. People won't write that in history. The historians don't know that stuff. This is on the ground stuff as it happened. And I know it happened because I was on that ground, right? So basically, that's it's nice to be able to share some of that detail, Bub, with the publics out there. Some well, actually, I was there. I wasn't a policy analyst. I wasn't sitting in my deck chair. I wasn't sitting in a policy office somewhere in head office. I was on the street. Okay. So, and I was hearing too what was going down, the grievances, the yelling, the screaming, and the beautiful blanket that Tamaiti displayed has always been etched in my mind. That was a magnificent theatrical moment, Tamaiti, and I congratulate you, man.
Say no more, eh?
Say no more. So,
amazing, Deb.
Yeah, so those are the things. And as I look back, Bub, and listen to the treaty settlements that have been happening, even here in Te Arawa, I remember those days. And had we not finished those 12 hui, we would not be in the same position we are in now. I have no regrets. despite the fact that our people had a lot of regrets at that time. Sure, some of them are still have regrets, but those who have entered that space are finding their own feet. Yeah, we'll make mistakes, but we'll also grow ourselves as well, because we can't rely on this system to do it for us. We got to do it for ourselves, and that's my learned experience anyway during that time.
That's massive. I'm actually just speechless. See, because it's kind of at a magnitude that I can't have any comments. So, except to say, wow. See, I remember all of it. I remember all of this. I remember you talking about it. I remember it being on TV. I remember you speaking about it after work. I remember going with you to Hui and stuff. And but it's funny. I didn't actually connect anything. I didn't until now. It's taken all this time.
Well, one of the things that as I'm in my koike days now, and I start recounting some of these things, and I might be sitting down with a group of people, then I start talking a little bit about this, and they go, "Hey," I say, "Yeah, that's what happened on the ground," you know. And when I look at TPK and how people get, even with the foreshore seabed stuff, and I'm not going to go into that, when they gathered at the Papa and they marched on the Parliament, Punikokiri staff was on the sidelines as we went past them, crying their eyes out because they couldn't join. So that's for another day.
We're actually going to do another podcast on that, Dad, together.
Yeah.
On another day, on another
one.
topic, okay? Yeah, we'll do that one for, say, next week, maybe. Yeah?
Yeah, because I think that foreshore seabed, that was an interesting one as well. And
because you were actually with Te Papa by the time foreshore seabed came around,
down there. I was down there in Te Papa where they all gathered before they marched on Parliament. And I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting, the leaders up in our offices to have a discussion about what they wanted us to do at Te Papa to do as part of their starting point. I won't name who, but it's for another day. But even one suggested we go up the flagpole and pull down the Union Jack and replace it with the Tino Rangatira tonal flag. I said, "Oh, sorry, I don't think I can go that far right now." But anyway, fun.
There'll be another one. Hey, Dan, I was wondering if you could just expand a little before we wrap it up, but on what your views are of how the iwi who took early settlement way back then, how even though it was a lot less than the actual value of what they had lost, way less. And what's your view on having taken the money then, but acknowledged that, getting an apology, receiving an apology, saying, kei te pai, the balance is gifted, our gift to Aotearoa, but that needs to be recognised. My first question is, was that recognised formally? That yes, it's worth, say, 1 billion, but we're only giving you a few million, and that the rest, the balance was that recognised? What was your word? Your words, how you explained it? The balance is a gift.
We got $150 million. So if you take that off the $10 billion that we believed it's worth, it's sort of the $9.9 billion of that deficit is our investment in the modern state of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Okay.
That's our statement, right?
Yeah.
That was the statement as to whether it was recorded is the investment in the modern state of Aotearoa, New Zealand. If that is not, I'm not sure whether that was recorded or not, but those were the comments that Tainui uttered when they had their settlement, when they were looking towards their settlement. Because they did. I mean, who wants to take $1 billion and $150 million when you think your deal is worth $10 billion? You have to have a pretty steely view that we can actually build ourselves up again. And boy, have they done that. There'll be objections to that in many respects, for some people. But actually, they when they look back, did they make the right choice? Well, yeah, they did, because they're getting more than 150 million now. They're getting a lot more millions.
Because that was going to be my question, Dad.
Oh,
sorry, a bit of echoing there, but that was going to be my question to you was, how sometimes, like I find this when I'm coaching people in their negotiations for property deals, just to buy a normal house. Sometimes I'm like, man, you need to just take the first offers sometimes, or make your first offer the best offer, or accept the first offer, because sometimes it may look like it's quite a distance away from the price you want to achieve. However, time is more valuable than
Yeah.
sometimes the dollar. And the earlier you can take money, the faster you can take action and use that money and turn it into a bigger snowball. You know how sometimes people end up spending more money on the lawyers, on the arguing, and on the missed opportunities in pursuit of a higher dollar?
Mm.
What's your views on that in respect to accepting the treaty
Oh,
settlements earlier?
there's no doubt that early movers have an advantage, and they had an advantage of, putting in place a relativity clause, which clawed back any differences that go above $1 billion. They would get a percentage of that. The subsequent deals that were done were more now done on their merit rather than relativity. So you could individually negotiate the merit of your claim. So definitely going in first and hard first is is a pretty good strategy generally when you're going into negotiations and trying to settling early before the other party gets their head around this space and starts thinking more about it in the detail. It's better to go in quick. And when you look at
And
even at the
starts going,
government,
oh, hang on, oh, and where the other party sort of has time to think, oh, geez,
yeah,
maybe we
that's
shouldn't
right.
offer them as much.
That's exactly right. And even when you look at the Billion Tree program, I've been part and parcel of a model where, and that's another story, I guess, where if you get in quick, the government put out $1 billion policy, billion tree program, and they were actually looking, well, what model are we going to use? If you got them really quickly, you got them before they actually had too much to think about models. And you put your model on the table and they look at it, they tease it out and go, oh, it's not bad. And you end up with a very good deal. And I know the deals that I've been involved with, a couple of very good deals on forestry and the Billion Tree program. So I think that's another one I'm happy to share because, but the government
Dad,
tightened
let's
up
just
a little
get you on
bit.
Sundays.
Yeah, yeah, well, or whatever. There's a lot of things yeah, that have been interesting in life, but in my experiences. So it's nice to be able to share them because I don't normally, you just don't do it. You just work it out and go through next job, next job. But when you think back on it, you can see, you know, um, you can see where the facts and fictions are, and and you do enjoy when you've had on the ground experience in those particular areas versus sitting in some ivory tower barking orders down the line when you've been on the ground with your people working it out and seeing the benefits and seeing some of the negatives too.
Dad, I could keep asking you more and asking you to expand, but I think it's just really powerful where you've taken this korero tonight. And if it's okay with you, we might just leave it there, because after this, after I end our broadcast, I think we're going to have to schedule in some more days for some more
Yeah, I'm
korero
happy to,
about
but yeah,
the Te Papa days and the foreshore days, the march.
hey, even
Yeah,
the
Dad,
mining
this is
days
brilliant.
underground in the mines was really interesting as well. Where they
Let's do
mined,
that,
how they
because let's
mined.
think about that. That's whenua Māori.
Mm, that's exactly right. Exactly right.
Let's talk about your mining days. After, oh gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Dad. Well,
Okay, but
thank you so much on behalf of everybody who listens, Dad, and anybody and everybody who's going to see this little recording. And I thank you, everybody, for who've tuned in, whether you're watching our little recording here with my dad or whether you're going to listen to it via Spotify. I hope you'll come and join us for our next quarter with my dad. I think we'll take it towards. I think I'd like to, even though everybody's probably really excited about hearing about the foreshore march and things, I would like to go back to the mining days. Let's go back into who you were, and what you were doing um, under the or in the whenua, in the 1980s. So your background as a geologist in the mines. What do you
Yeah,
think,
that would
Dad?
be interesting because it was, it was full of subsidence, land subsidence. There was going under the Waikato River, all those
Yeah,
sorts of things that
yeah,
people don't really know. And when you look at it, the West Mines, it blew up in the Pike River is very, very, very topical. And I knew a number of the mine managers, been down in those mines in the South Island as well, had a view on the
yeah,
Pike River as well. I mean, I would not have gone back in just as a feeder to my stories there. I would not have gone back in and done what they've done. But never mind, we fought fires in the West Mine. I was in there with my drilling rig helping them underground for 48 hours to try and put out fires. So next time,
Oh, that's a nice teaser. Next time.
next time.
Okay, from everybody, Paul Marie from White and White.
It's a bit of a whitewash.
You know what, Dad? You're white.
Rather than being wrong. Oops. Oops.
You're an egg.
Oh, my.
Dad, come on. Let's be serious. We haven't got room for black humour.
We're Humaria people, bub. Very peaceful people. Anyway, very, very humble people. We shall stop now, bub.
Yeah, we'll stop. We'll stop, Dad. I forgot to push in. All right,
Okay.
Paul Marie. We'll
Bye-bye,
see you
sweetheart.
at the next one. Bye.
Okay. Bye.